They assumed my presence would be lost beneath the violins and the champagne conversation, but contempt has a way of cutting through any room. My brother's voice sliced first sharp enough to freeze the atmosphere. "She's just a contract landscaping assistant," he informed the cousins crowded around him, acting as if the walls of the Royal Crest ballroom were soundproof against degradation. Marcy let her laughter spill like a careless stream, examining my dress with a gaze that seemed to unthread every fiber of it. Even my father added his assessment, calm, certain, and devastating. "You don't belong here." What none of them grasped was that the Royal Foundation was moments away from announcing the private benefactor who funded the entire gala, and that the woman they ridiculed was about to step into the spotlight they believed I would never approach. I hadn't expected the ballroom to feel so overwhelming. Chandeliers cast golden light across the polished floors, each reflection a reminder of how small I must have appeared among gowns valued more than the first prototypes in my old workshop. Guests moved past in a smooth rustle of silk and confidence, the kind built on legacies and inherited names. I stood just inside the entrance, inhaling the blend of roses, candles, and a perfume so rich it tasted foreign on my tongue. I shouldn't have felt apprehension, not after Blue Haven had grown into a recognized national name, not after the Royal Foundation requested to feature our story as inspiration for expanding their senior and children's health initiatives. But old emotional scars tend to surface in places where people evaluate worth before they acknowledge your existence. My father was the first of them to notice me. His steady gaze locked on mine a familiarity that struck harder than the violin swell pulsing through the hall. He spoke without raising his voice. "Harold Brooks never needed to. You shouldn't have come," he stated quietly, as if formal politeness could soften the harshness. "This is not your sphere." I might have offered a response if Max hadn't joined in with that condescending half-smile he'd perfected since childhood, the one that always treated my achievements as fortunate accidents. "Honestly, I'm surprised," he murmured to a cluster of relatives who edged closer. "She probably thinks they need someone to tend the flower beds outside." Laughter flickered between them, quiet but acute, a brief flare that still carried enough heat to sting. I held my breath and let the moment pass. Their words did not align with the woman I had become, but they remembered the girl I once was, the teenager who tended yards to afford textbooks, who pushed a sputtering machine from property to property, while they enjoyed effortless summers at private clubs. They believed those memories defined me forever. People tend to focus on the version of you that makes them feel superior. Marcy approached last, her crystal glass held aloft as if to salute my brazenness. The gems on her bracelet caught the light the way her sharp tone captured attention. "Sweet garment," she commented, tilting her head. "It looks durable, budget-friendly. A practical selection, I suppose." Someone behind her let out a brief, sharp sound. She leaned closer. "And the way you speak, Elena. You still sound like you just left a groundskeeping break room. This environment will completely overwhelm you." Their cruelty didn't surprise me, but the immediacy of it did no hesitation, no second thought, as though they'd been saving these remarks for years. Perhaps they had. Perhaps the success I built on tireless effort and late nights threatened the family narrative. They preferred the one where I never progressed beyond the old pushmower. I lifted my chin, not to engage, not to justify anything, but because I refused to compress myself back into the posture they expected. Behind them, the ballroom doors closed with a soft finality, confining us inside the regal world, cultivated with such care, rich banners, portraits of past leaders, the soft illumination of charity woven into every detail. I had studied those details for months. Blue Haven wasn't just a corporate sponsor tonight. We were central to the event's core mission, purified water and advanced filtration for every senior center. The foundation supported safer drinking systems for children with fragile health. Our systems, my systems, were already installed across dozens of facilities. Lives were being improved quietly, steadily. But the Brooks family never valued quiet improvements. A hush settled over the room as the host stepped onto the stage. Her dress shimmered like moving silver as she approached the microphone, her bearing dignified yet approachable. Esteemed guests, she began. Before our main presentation, the Royal Foundation wishes to acknowledge the extraordinary commitment of one individual, someone who requested to remain unknown, but whose contribution has completely transformed the health resources available to our seniors and children across the region. The atmosphere shifted. Conversations ceased. A few guests adjusted their posture in anticipation. A subtle flicker of apprehension crossed my father's face. Max's casual smile faltered. Marcy's grip tightened on her glass. They exchanged quick glances, as if sensing an imminent disclosure they couldn't yet name. The host continued, her voice carrying across the floor with elegance. Tonight's gala is entirely supported by one generous entrepreneur, a leader whose work in purified water technology has already provided assistance to thousands. A woman of foresight, tenacity, and profound kindness. My father's voice was a sharp whisper. Elena, stop this at once. Max muttered, absolutely not. Not her. Marcy blinked repeatedly, her facial tension evident. I did not move. Not yet. The room was not anticipating me, it was awaiting an acknowledgement. And now, the host said, smiling toward the assembly, with immense pride and appreciation, we invite our benefactor to join us. Please welcome Miss Elena Brooks. Silence struck the ballroom like a suddenly dropped curtain. I heard a glass tilt and nearly fall. Someone made a sharp intake of breath. Somewhere behind me, a relative whispered, "She cannot possibly be the one." But I was already moving forward. Every slight they had directed at me moments earlier hung in the air around them, suddenly fragile, suddenly trivial, suddenly exposed. Walking between tables draped in white fabric, I felt the comforting warmth of the lights rather than the bite of their words. My heels made a soft, consistent sound across the floor, steady, deliberate, no longer attempting to match anyone's tempo but my own. People separated as I passed, some murmuring recognition, others simply curious about the woman who had just redefined the entire atmosphere of the room. I reached the base of the stage. The host offered her hand with genuine respect. "Thank you for your decisive action," she said softly. "Your efforts are supporting lives." I nodded, a calm breath moving through me. The commitment is mine. Facing the audience, I observed faces I had never encountered looking at me, as though they finally grasped something vital. I also saw my family appearing small, unsettled, struggling to reconcile the version of me they had ridiculed with the one standing beneath the regal emblem. When the applause began softly at first, then sweeping through the hall, it was not for being affluent. It was not for proving them wrong. It was for the labor, the purpose, the people relying on water they could trust. That understanding anchored me more securely than any focused light. And in that moment, as I stood beneath the golden insignia of a world that once seemed unattainable, I understood this was not the night I was diminished. It was the night they revealed who they truly were, and the night I stepped into my true self. I didn't leave the stage immediately. The applause gradually faded into a gentle murmur, but I could still feel it vibrating within my core as I descended from the platform and moved toward a quieter perimeter of the ballroom. A server offered champagne. I declined, needing clarity more than a toast. The public attention had never deterred me. Necessity taught me how to stand alone, but the sight of my family watching me with that confused blend of disbelief and resentment awakened memories I believed I had overcome. I slipped onto a balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The night carried a slight coolness enough to settle my breathing. I allowed myself to acknowledge the truth I had ascended far from the environment they believed I would never escape. Yet the reverberations of earlier years remained as persistent as the scent of freshly cut grass that once covered my garments each summer. I recalled the first day I operated that push mower across Mrs. Daniels' property. I was 15, determined to earn enough for a local robotics course. While Max received a new bicycle and Marcy showcased expensive footwear, I saved coins in a container with a fractured lid. I would return home with chafed hands, sunburned skin, and grass remnants clinging to the cuffs of my trousers. My father rarely acknowledged the labor, only to remind me that physical work builds character, as though character was the only thing I was permitted to cultivate. Yet those long weekends shaped everything that followed. Tending the properties taught me exactitude lines, straight enough to satisfy demanding clients' patterns, consistent enough to secure repeat requests. It honed my focus on efficiency. Every adjustment of the machine could preserve or expend energy. Slowly, I began to observe the small details other people overlooked: the discoloration in patches of soil, the subtle metallic aroma in the irrigation water, the residue left on my hands after maintaining the machine. Those observations were the earliest foundations of Blue Haven. When I returned from the balcony to the ballroom, voices washed over me again. I walked deliberately, refusing to contract toward the periphery. Tonight, I had secured my position with the same resolve that carried me from a borrowed workshop to a company providing essential services to vulnerable communities across the region. But my family failed to recognize that. They always had. My father approached slowly. "Elena," he began, his voice strained. "Why did you not inform us? This unexpected disclosure makes us appear uninformed." "I did not conceal anything," I said. "You never inquired." His mouth twitched. "You could have communicated if your life was taking this direction." My life was not something I merely drifted into. It was something I engineered one late-night prototype at a time. "I invited you to visit Blue Haven last year," I reminded him gently. "You declined." He looked away, his jaw rigid, searching for an explanation that didn't expose his profound lack of interest. "I presumed it was another small concept you were exploring. Nothing consequential." A familiar ache settled in my ribs. I had grown successful, independent, resilient, but the girl seeking his acceptance still waited. I did not allow the feeling to persist. Not tonight. Max was the next. He hovered near the dessert display. "So," he started, "you are the anonymous benefactor." He attempted a casual laugh, but it broke off quickly. "Should have anticipated you wouldn't stay in contract landscaping forever." "That occupation provided funds for my first engineering course," I replied. "It initiated everything for me." "We were younger. We didn't know better," he said. "You do not have to be a child to undervalue someone," I thought. "Adults accomplish it with far greater precision." Marcy waited even longer. Eventually, she traversed the floor with quick, light steps. "Elena," she said, clutching her handbag tightly, "I was unaware of your involvement with the Royal Foundation." She attempted a stiff smile. "That was compelling." "It was not about impressing anyone," I said. "It was about the program's potential." Their responses only intensified an issue I had avoided for years. What I desired, what I had always desired, was respect based on reality, and those three had never cared to understand mine. Hours passed as I moved between groups responding to inquiries about Blue Haven's purification model, the fabrication process, and the expansion into underserved regions. Discussing the purpose stabilized me. It brought me back to the families who required clean water. My achievement was not based on chance or inheritance. It was built on years of focused problem-solving, studying water composition at a kitchen table and constructing prototypes from basic components because that was all I could afford. I had witnessed system after system fail in low-income neighborhoods. I could not accept that. Therefore, I built a superior solution. When the orchestra transitioned, I moved toward a quieter part of the hall where a portrait of Princess Amelia reminded me why I selected this industry to provide families with the security my own had lacked. As I observed the portrait, the director of the Harborwood Senior Center approached me, thanking me sincerely for the reduction in resident respiratory concerns. She stated, "You have given them tranquility." Tranquility. A word I never associated with my own childhood residence. I looked across the room at my family one last time. They remained grouped together, uncertain whether to engage or retreat. They could not force me back into the role they assigned long ago, and I was not going to reduce myself to fit it. Tonight did not erase our past, but it illuminated a truth I ascended, because the people relying on my work deserved someone who would not yield under scrutiny. As the orchestra played its final notes, I adjusted my posture and walked toward the next segment of the evening. Their past words had held the capacity to harm me. Now they only demonstrated how far I had progressed without their support. The ballroom lighting softened as the orchestra transitioned to a calmer tempo, yet inside me everything tightened. I moved away from the activity and toward a quieter hallway. The sound of the music diminished behind me, while a different memory arose, one shaped by the steady sound of motors' hands marked by effort and the raw resolve that sustained me through years of doubt. Long before Blue Haven, I lived in a house where ambitions were constrained by someone else's limitations. My father consistently divided the world into two types: individuals destined for achievement and individuals built for function. Max fit the first. I belonged to the second in his estimation: dependable, diligent, unremarkable. His silence communicated this every time he boasted about someone else's potential while offering me a perfunctory gesture and changing the topic. Yet I recall the specific afternoon when that perspective fractured. I was 16, kneeling beside an old machine with damaged paint. Mrs. Daniels had offered a modest sum to anyone willing to repair her equipment. I accepted, even though I had no prior knowledge of engine repair. I watched numerous instructional videos late into the night, learning how carburetors function, how spark plugs ignite, how fuel lines obstruct. By morning, I possessed sufficient knowledge to attempt the repair. 2 hours later, the motor started with a satisfying sound. News spread. Within a month, neighbors queued up with broken machines. The unexpected element wasn't the income, it was the way repairing those machines ignited something within me. Every time a motor resumed operation, I experienced a quiet, steady competence and understanding that I could resolve complex issues. When I informed my father about the additional earnings, he responded with a predictable nod. "Mechanical tasks suit you," he remarked, implying you are not suited for more. His tone did not deter me. It motivated me in a manner he never anticipated. My entrepreneurial insight emerged through meticulous patterns analyzing water residue on machine components, tracing health concerns shared by children who played in certain areas. I sensed the inconsistency. During my final year of high school, I undertook an independent study collecting soil and tap water samples. When the analysis revealed mineral concentrations in 3 residences, my science instructor softened her stance. "You may actually have discovered something significant," she murmured. That minimal validation fueled me for months. Years later, when I engineered my first purification model in a borrowed workspace, those early findings guided every specification. It was not chance or charity that brought Blue Haven into existence. It was careful observation, refined by necessity. As I leaned over the railing of the walkway, the director of the Eldermore Health Center, Mrs. Whitford, approached. "Our residents have inquired about you since the upgrades. Some have not felt this level of wellness in years. Your system's accomplished more for our community than any financial support we've received in recent decades." Her sincere affirmation contrasted so sharply with my family's dismissive attitude that I could not speak. The two perspectives, one that doubted me completely, one that flourished because of what I had constructed, coexisted only a few feet apart. When she returned to the main gathering, a memory surfaced. My father once cautioned me that ambition was a precarious pursuit for someone without the appropriate pedigree. His conviction became the obstacle I overcame until I no longer required anything from him. When I re-entered the ballroom, every interaction reinforced a reality my family refused to acknowledge. My work was not fragile or accidental. It was robust, necessary, and respected. Yet even with all that positive confirmation surrounding me, I felt a familiar, faint ache. The girl who once repaired motors to afford tuition still existed within me, hoping someone at home would one day call her competent. Across the room, I caught sight of my family again. They struggled most to accept my transformation. A server paused near me with a tray of fresh water, and I accepted a glass. As I drank, a sudden clarity arose. This ballroom was not the first place they attempted to restrict me. It was simply the last place they would succeed. Dr. Melanie Hart, a prominent researcher, approached next. "Your purification units resulted in reduced hospitalization rates in 3 regions. That is a measurable influence. They are evident because you understand the underlying principles," she said. "Funding assists, but expertise improves lives." Her comment resonated deeply, the part of me that persevered after being labeled ordinary. Ordinary girls were not expected to establish companies. Yet here I stood carrying proof that nothing about me had ever been ordinary. As the orchestra music dimmed, I followed the deliberate movement toward the center. My commitment belonged to those who truly relied on my work, not to those who believed reputation outweighed purpose. Just before the lighting changed, I caught a final view of my family. Their discomfort no longer defined me, it revealed them. And as the host returned to the microphone, I understood their estimation of me had never been the obstacle. The only obstacle was the time I spent hoping they might comprehend me someday. That time concluded tonight. My father's voice reached me before the man himself stepped into my view. It carried that same sharp command he wielded throughout my childhood, the tone intended to bring me to an immediate stop. "We must speak," he stated, making no effort to disguise the agitation marking his face. The overhead lighting cast pale reflections across his forehead, exposing a strain he could not conceal. I had anticipated this conversation eventually, though not so soon after the public acknowledgement. Still, nothing in his demeanor surprised me. Acceptance had never been his natural response. I accompanied him to the edge of the ballroom, where thick drapes absorbed some of the noise. The guests continued their conversations, dining, smiling, dancing, unaware of the emotional confrontation occurring in this confined space. My father stood with his hands tightly clasped, as if bracing against an anticipated impact. "You place this family in an awkward situation," he said. "A private contribution of this magnitude. Why would you keep that information from us?" "You never inquired about my work," I replied. "You have treated all of it as a casual interest." His eyes narrowed. "Do not misrepresent my statements. I supported you. I have always provided support." Support had never included curiosity. Support had never sounded like encouragement. Support had never arrived when instructional manuals were spread across my bedroom floor, or when I disassembled water fixtures merely to understand how purification components aligned. He had called it tinkering, as though curiosity was a passing phase I would abandon. I maintained an even tone. "You presumed I was merely passing time. You dismissed the company before you recognized its mission." "That is because you never articulated the mission," he said sharply. "You simply disappeared into that workshop every weekend, occupied with who knows what." "I was building something," I answered. "You demonstrated no interest in knowing what." Before he could offer a further argument, Marcy moved through the drape with quick steps. Her voice sounded thin with nervousness as she approached. "Uncle Harold, please remain calm," she advised, her eyes shifting between us. Everyone observed the acknowledgement. "It is already being discussed online. We must consider the external perception." I turned toward her. "External perception. That is your main concern right now." She gripped her clutch as if seeking stability. "This family maintains a reputation. People engage in conversation. They will speculate why we were unaware of your involvement. They will assume there is discord." Silence settled between us. She failed to realize she had accurately described the reality. "What they assume does not concern me," I said. "My attention remains on the communities dependent on Blue Haven." Her eyebrows lifted in mild doubt. "You always state that. But it does not negate how your decisions affect all of us." That sentence echoed years of smaller, focused criticisms, advice cloaked as guidance anxiety, disguising a sense of superiority. I remembered sitting at dining tables hearing that exact repetition whenever I chose a direction that did not align with their preferences. My father exhaled sharply. "You could have kept us informed. A brief update, that is all it would have required." I kept my hands steady at my sides. "I invited you to learn more. You were not interested. My efforts did not matter until they caused you discomfort." His face flushed with indignation. "No one is experiencing discomfort." Marcy touched his sleeve. "Uncle, please." She turned back to me with a rehearsed smile. "You have accomplished something impressive, Elena, truly. But you must comprehend how this situation appears. An acknowledgement of that magnitude, seemingly spontaneous people will assume we are detached. They will think you are distancing yourself from the family." I did not distance myself, I replied. I simply ceased forcing the connection. Behind us, the orchestra transitioned to a more lively composition. Laughter and chatter circulated through the ballroom. A pair of servers passed with trays of small bites. Everything outside this private corner was vibrant with celebration, while inside the past asserted its influence. Max entered last, his jaw tight. He observed my face before closing the drape behind him. "Why did you not mention any of this?" he asked. "We have conversed for years, and you never indicated Blue Haven was this significant." "You never asked," I said quietly. "And when I attempted to share early concepts, you remarked it sounded too ambitious for someone without an established team." He winced slightly, recalling the comment. "I did not intend it that way." "But you believed it," I answered. A restless strain settled over all four of us. This was the first time they faced the repercussions of undervaluing me, not merely because of financial success, but because the world had recognized a capability they had declined to see. My father adjusted his collar, gaining a moment to steady himself. "Listen," he began, attempting a composed tone. "You have placed yourself in a prominent position. Significant contributions attract detailed scrutiny. You are relatively inexperienced. Errors occur. Your company may become the subject of intense focus. We merely wish to assist you in navigating that." "I am not in a vulnerable situation," I said. "I established my business with full transparency." "That may be," he conceded. "But people discuss. Investors discuss. Journalists discuss. If they believe your own relatives maintained a distance, they will formulate assumptions regarding credibility." "There is nothing wrong with my credibility," I replied. "There is something flawed with your assumptions." Another silence. This time none of them attempted to break it. I turned toward the exit of the alcove, intending to rejoin the main gathering, but Marcy caught my arm gently. "Wait," she said. "I did not intend to be disparaging earlier." Her voice softened. "I was surprised. That is the truth." "You offered ridicule," I said gently, "because that was the most familiar response." She blinked rapidly. "I misjudged your capabilities." "You never made an effort to judge accurately," I answered. "I stopped expecting fairness years ago." Her hand released my arm. She moved aside. I walked back into the ballroom, leaving their isolated group behind. The atmosphere felt different outside that secluded area, lighter, less contaminated by their efforts to reassert authority. Guests swayed on the main floor. Crystal glasses chimed softly. Light gathered across the gold-rimmed tables. I found myself breathing more deeply, as though the room finally welcomed me in a way my own family never had. A quiet voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Miss Brooks." A young woman from the Royal Foundation approached with a respectful smile. She carried a digital tablet tucked against her arm. "Her Highness would like to speak with you briefly at your convenience. Nothing formal, simply an expression of thanks." My composure returned. "Of course. She is in the East Reception Hall when you are ready," the woman said before departing. As I moved across the ballroom, I noticed my father watching me again. Something unexpressed flickered in his look. Satisfaction entangled with discomfort, confusion knotted around a reality he did not know how to handle. His daughter had stepped into a world he believed belonged only to those who followed routes prescribed by others. I had created my own route, and that contradicted everything he understood about ambition, standing, and birthright. I continued toward the East Hall, allowing distance to grow behind me. The palace corridor was illuminated with soft light from candles. Each painting along the walls depicted scenes of selfless contribution, leaders visiting community centers, opening medical facilities, generations of governance rooted in service. I paused near one portrait, showing a healthcare provider offering a glass of water to an elderly woman. The action appeared simple, yet it precisely mirrored the reason Blue Haven existed. A memory surfaced sharply. I was 22, visiting a small care home with outdated plumbing. Residents complained of metallic flavors. One woman confided that her beverage tasted strongly of mineral residue, though she did not want to inconvenience anyone by reporting it. That visit remained with me long after I left. Their vulnerability carved a space in me that determined Blue Haven's core mission. When I entered the reception hall, Princess Amelia stood near a large window overlooking the gardens. Her stance conveyed calm assurance. She turned with a sincere smile. "Miss Brooks," she greeted, "thank you for coming over." "The honor is mine," I said. She gestured toward a small arrangement of seating. "You have achieved something remarkable. Many contributors offer financial support. Few create fundamental solutions." Her words disarmed me more completely than any public praise. I have observed the results when people depend on compromised water. I wanted to provide them with something trustworthy. "You have accomplished much more than that," she said. "The Foundation reviewed the health data from our partnered facilities. The improvements are unequivocal." Hearing those findings directly from her felt profound. I am grateful the systems are functioning effectively. She studied me with a thoughtful expression. "You navigated every difficulty with resilience. That characteristic is uncommon." She paused. "And it is evident that some of those difficulties originated from sources quite near to you." "Sure," I did not respond. I did not need to. She had observed enough interactions tonight to comprehend the underlying strain. "Strength developed without a claim is the most formidable kind," she said softly. That statement settled into me like a stable energy source. "Your work will influence the future trajectory of our initiatives," she continued. "We hope to maintain a partnership with you for many years." "I am fully committed," I replied. Her smile deepened. "Then tonight is merely the prelude." When I stepped out of the reception hall, I felt more grounded than I had all evening. I walked through the corridor past the portraits and returned to the ballroom where the guests continued to enjoy the occasion. My family remained at a distance, unsure how to bridge the widening separation between us. I felt no resentment. I felt no desire for personal revenge. I felt no excessive pride. I was simply aware, completely intentionally aware, of the reality that my trajectory no longer required their belief. Whatever came next, I had developed the tenacity to face it, and for the first time in my life, that tenacity felt entirely my own. My shoes made a gentle sound against the highly polished floor as I moved away from the group of distinguished guests. Their sincere congratulations still echoed, yet none of it relieved the tension gripping my chest. Something unstated lingered in the atmosphere, a pressure building not from strangers, but from the individuals who should have understood me implicitly. I sensed it like the drop in pressure before a storm. And when I reached the distant edge of the ballroom where the lights diminished into shadow, the storm arrived wearing my brother's tense expression. Max obstructed my path with a rigid posture and a partially suppressed look of derision. "So this is the culmination," he said, folding his arms. "Your elaborate announcement, your singular moment. No congratulations, not even genuine curiosity, only thinly concealed indignation. You couldn't give us advance notice. You felt the need to create a dramatic scene." I maintained a calm breath. It was not a dramatic scene. The Foundation arranged the public acknowledgement. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "You made us appear foolish, Elena. People are assuming we neglected you. They are exchanging quiet comments that you purposefully kept everything concealed so you could cause us embarrassment." His anger was not about my achievement, it was about the perceived damage to his image. "I did not conceal my efforts," I stated. "You dismissed them. There is a fundamental difference." "Oh, please." He made a dismissive gesture. "You tending yards, fixing equipment, then suddenly transforming into some purification technology expert? No one could have foreseen that." "Because no one paid attention." He flinched, and for a brief moment regret flickered across his face. It vanished quickly, replaced by something more aggressive. "You were obligated to prepare us. Father is intensely angry. Marcy is agitated. They believe you deliberately set this up." "I owe you nothing," I responded quietly. "Least of all consent to my personal development." Before he could offer a retort, Marcy materialized, her heels striking the floor with nervous quickness. Her gaze scrutinized my face, as though searching for confirmation that I had meticulously planned this entire event to personally humiliate her. "Do you grasp what people are saying?" she demanded. "Everywhere I go, someone whispers about how we misjudged you. They assume we failed to support you. They think we neglected your needs. You did. I said not with malicious intent, not with triumph, simply with truth. Her mouth opened slightly, clearly astonished by the directness of the statement. She regained her composure rapidly. "You are unbelievable," she whispered. "All these years you worked in silence. Why to prove a specific point?" "I worked in silence," I replied, "because speaking openly never convinced any of you to listen." Her expression faltered. "We would have listened if you had presented something worth hearing." That sentence struck exactly where she aimed, directly at the core of old insecurities I thought I had neutralized. I took a breath slow and deep, allowing the impact to register without causing internal damage. A soft sound suddenly resonated through the hall, indicating a change in the program schedule. Food service staff hurried forward with serving trays. Guests rotated toward the stage, where the next speaker prepared to address the audience. Decorations shimmered under the chandelier's light, but the warmth they produced could not dissipate the coldness circulating around my family. My father approached next, walking with a stiff determination that revealed everything he refrained from saying. "We must speak immediately and privately," he stated. "I have already engaged in private conversation," I replied. "I am finished hiding in isolated spaces with you." His nostrils flared. "You are behaving like an uncooperative adolescent." "No," I said. "I stopped behaving like one the moment I ceased needing your acknowledgement." He attempted to lecture me, but a group of significant contributors approached before he could continue. They offered commendations and asked detailed follow-up questions about Blue Haven's specific technology. My father stood rigidly beside me, forced to listen, as external figures celebrated the work he had trivialized for 10 years. With every question I answered, his authoritative demeanor diminished slightly. He was no longer the undisputed voice dictating my future. Tonight he was merely a man realizing he had fundamentally misunderstood his daughter. When the contributors moved away, he spoke again, quieter this time. "I was unaware you developed into this." "I developed regardless," I said, "without requiring your permission." He blinked, unable to form a coherent response. I stepped away from them, needing separation, needing clarity. My movement led me to a calmer lounge just beyond the main hall, softly upholstered seating, dim wall lighting a side table, holding partially emptied glasses. I settled into a corner seat and exhaled slowly. My pulse normalized against my ribs. For the first time all evening, I allowed the full impact of the situation to register: the years of doubt, the personal sacrifice, the nights spent fusing components inside a cold workshop, the profound anxiety that my community clients would face unnecessary health risks if I failed to meet a deadline. I had constructed something significant while my family constructed rationalizations for their inattention. The lounge remained mostly unoccupied until a tall gentleman with silver hair stepped inside. His manner conveyed a quiet assurance, and I recognized him instantly: Sir Rowan, the Royal Foundation's Senior Program Director. He noticed me sitting alone and approached with a genuine, gentle smile. "May I join you?" he asked. "Please do." He seated himself across from me. "I observed the reactions following your name's announcement. I suspect this evening presents unique complexities for you." "That is an accurate assessment. You would be surprised how frequently families experience difficulty when someone deviates from their predetermined path," he commented. "People become attached to established roles. When one individual progresses, the entire structure shifts. Some celebrate, others resist." "It is painful," I admitted quietly. "Even when I understand their opinions should hold no weight." He nodded thoughtfully. "Difficulty and progress often coexist. But what you achieved tonight, that was extraordinary. You were improving lives long before anyone offered applause." His words carried the composure of a man dedicated to humanitarian service. Receiving validation from someone outside my fractured family history stabilized my resolve. When I initiated Blue Haven, I said I desired only one objective: to prevent another child from becoming ill because their water supply was compromised. It was never about public recognition. "And yet, the recognition is well-deserved," he stated. "Do not minimize your achievement." For a moment, I allowed myself to absorb the full weight of what this night signified. Not retribution, not mere success, but validation in a system that once overlooked me. We discussed future pilot programs briefly, then he rose and departed with a respectful gesture. Alone again, I let my shoulders relax into the soft seating. A slow, profound realization dawned. My family was not angry because they felt deceived. They were angry because the truth forced them to acknowledge how profoundly they had underestimated someone of their own lineage. A soft disturbance broke the stillness. A small boy approximately 6 years old stepped into the lounge carrying a small drink. His eyes widened when he noticed me. "Are you the lady who provides clean water to the ill children?" I offered a gentle smile. "I aim to be." "My grandmother said you helped save her neighbor's life," he exclaimed. "She said you are like a true advocate." His sincerity resonated deeper than any formal praise. I lowered myself so we were at the same eye level. "Your grandmother's neighbor is resilient. I simply assisted a little." He grinned proudly, then rushed back toward the ballroom, calling out, "Mother, I saw the water lady." The moment wrapped around me with an unexpected tenderness. That child was not concerned whether my father doubted me or whether my cousins ridiculed my attire. He only knew that someone cared about the people he loved, and that more than affluence or standing defined who I had become. I stood up from the seat with a renewed sense of purpose, prepared to return to the main hall. The evening had not broken me. It had clarified every uncertainty. Their disbelief was not my obligation. Their disappointment was not my failing. Their discomfort was not my duty. I had crossed a threshold they never attempted to reach, and now the separation between us finally made complete sense. I returned to the ballroom with a calmer heart rate, though the moment I stepped across the threshold, I sensed a change in the atmosphere around me. Conversations hushed. Several guests glanced toward the western stairway, exchanging quiet remarks behind their elevated glasses. A ripple of suppressed communication moved through the hall like a subtle warning. Even before I followed their gaze, I detected the source of the disturbance. Conflict often carried my family's distinct signature. My father stood at the top of the stairs, his face flushed and his breathing labored, as though the sheer pressure of the evening had finally shattered whatever composure he had maintained. Max trailed slightly behind him, speaking rapidly, in an undertone, attempting unsuccessfully to restrain him. Marcy hovered in the background, her complexion pale, clutching her purse as if it were the only stable object within reach. A moment of intense emotional release was imminent. I moved closer, careful to proceed deliberately. This grand location held sufficient history without the addition of our private chaos to its narrative, but my father rarely registered his environment when his pride was wounded. Tonight, wounds covered every aspect of his self-perception. "You do not have the right to circulate here, acting like some entitled figure," he snapped when he saw me beginning to ascend the steps. "You misled us. You disgraced us." I stopped 2 steps below him. "I did not disgrace anyone." "You did," he insisted. "You made us appear ignorant. What kind of daughter conceals a significant achievement? What kind of daughter permits her family to learn from strangers what she has accomplished?" His voice amplified, attracting more attention than the background music. I kept my own voice steady. "A daughter who concluded long ago that sharing anything meaningful with you led nowhere productive." He stiffened. "I have always been concerned about your well-being." "You were concerned about the trajectory you had envisioned for me," I stated, "not the one I meticulously built." Sharp intakes of breath moved through the nearby crowd. Guests feigned indifference to the conversation. A few retreated slightly to create a wider buffer. The royal staff exchanged glances, prepared to intervene if the argument escalated further. Max stepped forward, attempting to mediate. "Father, please stop. We should not have this discussion in this public setting." But my father disregarded him. "You owe us respect. After everything I dedicated to this family, you should demonstrate gratitude." Gratitude. The word cut deeper than his anger. Gratitude in his lexicon implied silence, compliance, acceptance that I would never reach a sufficient standard. It meant remaining confined enough to fit within his restrictive definition of worth. "I am grateful," I said quietly, "but not for the reasons you imagine." His jaw tightened. "Do not speak in ambiguous terms." "I am grateful you underestimated me," I continued. "It taught me how to endure when no one believed in what I was striving to construct." A red flush crept up his neck. "Stop attempting to characterize me as the antagonist." "You are not the antagonist," I answered. "You are simply an individual who failed to truly see me." Across the hall, the background music suddenly played a distinct, strong note as the orchestra changed compositions. My father's expression contorted into something between shock and intense rage. "You believe personal achievement grants you the right to disrespect us." Before I could formulate a response, Marcy interjected. Her voice trembled. "Uncle Harold, people are observing. Please let us move to a private area." "They should observe," he snapped. "They should understand precisely what she has done." I met his gaze directly. "What I achieved was hard work." "That work did not take place in a genuine industry," he declared. "You benefited from a chance encounter in this situation. Some benefactor likely provided you with assistance because they offered you sympathy." The accusation struck with unexpected force, not because I believed it, but because it conclusively demonstrated he possessed zero understanding of my actual journey. Not one all-night study session, not one failed early model, not one grant application, not one community alliance, not a single element of the tenacity behind Blue Haven existed in his limited understanding. "I did not benefit from chance in any capacity," I said. "I earned every metric of the ground I currently stand on." My father opened his mouth to argue again, but a clear, authoritative voice interrupted the rising tension. "Mr. Brooks." Princess Amelia descended the staircase with deliberate movements accompanied by two advisors. Her presence instantly quieted the hall. Even my father froze in place. "Is there an issue?" she inquired, her tone firm, yet measured. My father adjusted his stance, attempting to reclaim a semblance of dignity. "Your Highness, my daughter has been disingenuous with her own family. I am addressing a private domestic matter." "This is not the suitable location," she replied. "And it is not the suitable tone." Her gentle but unequivocal correction affected him more profoundly than any verbal defense I could have offered. He struggled to formulate a reply. "I am merely—" She raised one hand slightly. He became silent. Then she turned toward me, her composure warm and supportive. "Miss Brooks, we are about to commence the formal acknowledgement ceremony for our major contributors. I would be honored if you would accompany me to the front." Her invitation was more than a gesture. It was protection provided with elegance. I inclined my head. "Certainly." My father's eyes widened. "Acknowledgement ceremony," Princess Amelia addressed him directly. "Your daughter has provided one of the most transformative contributions our organization has received in recent years. Her work is significantly improving elder care and child health programs across multiple regions." The room ambiance shifted. Guests murmured with expressions of respect. Several nodded toward me with renewed admiration. My father looked between the princess and me as though he had stepped into an alternate reality he could not comprehend. I was unaware. You never inquired," I said softly. A moment of silence followed. Something delicate fractured within his expression. Pride attempted to hold its shape, but a sense of exposure permeated the fissures. Max averted his gaze. Marcy's lips parted with an uncontrollable tremor. Princess Amelia waited a moment before offering her arm toward the descending steps. "Shall we proceed?" I stepped forward, but my father grasped my wrist not with physical aggression, but with a desperate, clinging need. "Elena," he whispered, "do not walk away like this. I am still your parent." His hold was not forceful yet. Something about it triggered every childhood memory of being forcibly constrained, every instance when he utilized his authority to keep me confined within a role too small for my capacity. I gently removed my arm from his grasp. Being my parent necessitated recognizing me as I developed. His hand dropped to his side. And for the first time tonight, he had no further words. Princess Amelia led me down the stairs, her presence establishing a path of respect through the assembled crowd. Applause followed us, consistent, sincere, increasing in volume. Each step carried me further from the version of myself molded by their skepticism. Each breath felt more expansive, as though the palace walls themselves affirmed my presence. When we reached the stage, she leaned close and whispered, "You navigated that situation with exceptional poise." I did not feel poised. I felt emotionally depleted, but I offered a slight nod. As she moved toward the microphone, I glanced back at my family. Their group appeared smaller now, not in physical size, but in emotional significance. The control they once held over my self-perception had dissipated, replaced by a clarity I had resisted for years. I did not require their approval. I did not require their comprehension. And I certainly did not require their consent to continue my progression. Princess Amelia began speaking, her voice carrying across the entire hall. My name followed moments later. Applause surged again. My father lowered his head. And the night transformed into something far more significant than a formal reception. It became the moment I finally relinquished the burden that was never meant for me. Applause still resonated through the ballroom when I moved away from the stage, although the sound no longer felt like a suffocating weight. A multitude of eyes observed as I descended the steps, yet none of their gazes felt as intense as the quiet that followed my family's retreat. They stood detached from the main gathering, uncertain whether to withdraw completely or attempt another confrontation. I walked past them without hesitation, allowing the emotional intensity to settle where it belonged, firmly in the past. The palace staff directed guests toward the dining areas, while the orchestra transitioned into a softer composition. I inhaled the comforting scent of roasted ingredients and a delicate citrus aroma rising from the serving dishes. For the first time that evening, the atmosphere did not feel charged. A subtle change had occurred. The floor beneath my feet felt more solid, the space around me clearer. I moved through the room with a composure I lacked earlier, a composure born from finally understanding that nothing I accomplished required their validation. But leaving that direct confrontation behind did not empty my mind. My thoughts returned to the years I struggled to advance one long night following another. I remembered evenings when my prototypes failed to activate, and mornings when exhaustion settled into my body so profoundly I questioned if I could stand up. I remembered working after classes because I needed to fund purification chemicals, tubing sensors, and laboratory-grade filters, not luxuries, but essential items for the research no one believed in except me. I remembered the day I examined water samples under an inexpensive optical device and saw contaminants swirling like tiny visible hazards. That observation changed everything. It compelled me to accept a personal responsibility no one else placed upon me. I embraced it willingly. I reached the far perimeter of the ballroom where a high window overlooked the gardens. The glass reflected my formal attire, the distant stage light still catching faintly on the material. The woman reflected back did not resemble the contract landscaping assistant they once dismissed. She looked like someone who selected her own purpose and finally inhabited it fully. A soft voice drew my attention. "Miss Brooks." I turned to see an elderly woman with soft silver hair approaching me with the assistance of a cane. Her movements were slow but deliberate. Recognition was immediate, Mrs. Keller from Pine Hollow Senior Services. Her facility was one of the earliest to test Blue Haven's inaugural units. I had personally installed them when we lacked the personnel to dispatch full teams. She smiled when she reached me. "I have been hoping to locate you," she said. "The foundation allocated us another grant last month. They indicated your company specifically recommended our location due to our residents' acute health requirements." "You were deserving," I replied. "Your center operates with minimal staff, yet you care for your people with more dedication than facilities with 3 times your funding." Her eyes became moist. "Your filtration systems eased their respiratory distress. Some of our older residents are experiencing restful sleep for the first time in years." She reached for my hand. "Thank you, my dear." That single phrase, my dear, did not feel patronizing. It felt tender, almost maternal. Something within me relaxed. I gently squeezed her hand. Thank you for believing in my work before anyone else did. You earned that belief, she said. Never permit the wrong assessments to obscure the truth. Her words resonated long after she returned to her table, leaving me standing with a satisfying warmth emanating from my chest. I did not have long for reflection before Max reappeared. His movements were uncertain, his shoulders slightly stooped, the superficial confidence he displayed earlier now replaced with profound uncertainty. He approached slowly as though unsure whether I would simply dismiss him. Elena, he began, rubbing the back of his neck. I should not have lost my composure with you. His voice was strained. The events were overwhelming. I did not know how to process it. You did not need to process it, I said. You only needed to show me respect. He swallowed hard. I did not recognize the significance of your efforts. Not until tonight. You never inquired about it. His gaze dropped. I was self-focused, he admitted. I assumed I comprehended your life better than you did. That was unfair. A part of me wanted to let him continue without interruption, but another part, a part that had tolerated poor treatment quietly for years, would no longer accept superficial statements of remorse. You made fun of me for tending properties, I reminded him. You ridiculed me for enrolling in extra science courses. You called my projects excessive, do you recall? Regret tightened his expression. I was incorrect. Yes, I stated. You were. He moved closer, hesitated, then finally asked, Is there any possibility we can establish a fresh beginning? I observed him closely. His face held something unfamiliar, not entitlement, not superiority, but genuine regret. True remorse, not the refined version he used to evade critique. Establishing a fresh beginning, I said slowly, requires sustained action. You do not get to offer support only when other people endorse me. I understand, he replied, and you do not get to treat me as a component of your own self-image. He nodded. I hear your statement. I believed he did at least partially, but belief would not resolve everything instantly. Growth was not immediate. It demanded patience, honesty, and a level of effort my family rarely exhibited. I exhaled. We will observe, Max. We will observe. He did not press for more. He simply nodded once and stepped back, granting me the personal space he used to invade. Moments after he left, a young woman in a dark dress approached with a hesitant expression. Miss Brooks, I apologize for the interruption, but may I ask you something? Of course. My younger sibling suffers from severe respiratory problems. The water quality in our neighborhood seems to trigger episodes the doctors cannot fully explain. I heard your company provides evaluation services. How do we access that? The sincerity in her eyes reminded me of the foundational purpose of my business. You do not require formal access, I said. You only require the address. Provide it to me. I will dispatch a team next week. If the system specifications align with your residence, we will manage the installation. Without charge. Her breathing hitched. Are you being serious? Yes. Children should not become ill from something as fundamental as water. Immediate moisture filled her eyes. Thank you. I thank you so much. She quickly moved back into the crowd before I could offer any further comfort. My heart was deeply affected. Moments like this was the true effort. Not formal events, not public recognition, not formal announcements. The tangible lives positively influenced by something I once designed at a collapsible table. As the dinner service concluded, staff cleared the settings and guests returned to the activity. Warm light washed over the polished stone floors. The walls shimmered with golden reflections. Yet beneath the beautiful facade, a transformation resonated through the environment. People no longer perceived me as the girl in the modest attire. They perceived a woman instigating genuine change. Princess Amelia stepped near me again. You appear more relaxed, she noted. I feel more relaxed, I answered. You managed your family with remarkable self-control, she observed. That is more difficult than speaking from a stage. Self-control was not strength before tonight, I admitted. It was merely silence. And now, I said, it is a deliberate choice. Her smile deepened. That is well, because you will require that resolve for what lies ahead. Your innovation is attracting deserved attention, the beneficial kind. Attention is not the objective for which I established this. No, she agreed, but attention assists the purpose in expanding. A soft, consistent composition from the string section drifted through the hall, establishing a mood both reflective and comforting. I stood still, allowing the significance of the moment to permeate me. My former life seemed distant. My future awaited. And somewhere between those 2 points, my resolve finally became unyielding. I was no longer the contract landscaping assistant. I was no longer the neglected daughter. I was no longer the undervalued cousin. Tonight marked the decisive shift, not due to affluence, not due to prestige, but because I finally grasped the core truth. I did not require my family to acknowledge me. I required myself to stop diminishing my own presence. The orchestra transitioned into another flowing piece as I moved away from the edge of the main activity, requiring a brief interval of quiet before the next sequence of introductions. Warm laughter circulated through the hall glasses, made soft sounds beneath the crystal lighting, and the subtle aroma of a pleasant flower drifted from the arrangements near the platform. Everything shone gold, silver, silk, polished stone, yet beneath all that refinement, I sensed pressure forming like an underwater current, waiting to pull the evening into deeper emotional turmoil. I moved along the perimeter toward a secluded corner. From this vantage point, I could observe the gathering without being immediately immersed in its noise. The foundation staff exchanged labels, dignitaries assembled for official photographs, and contributors gathered in small groups discussing strategies for future initiatives. In every direction, people offered me acknowledgments with genuine respect. Their positive regard anchored something vital within me. But beyond their expressions of support, I saw the shadows gathering where my family stood, clustered near a large support column, as though the crowd itself had become threatening. Marcy spoke intensely to Max, her hands trembling as she held her device. He continuously checked the main entrance as if anticipating outside assistance. My father rigidly gripped the back of a formal chair, his knuckles white, his pulse visibly active along his jawline. They were no longer speaking to me, they were speaking about me. The distinction carried a cold, familiar pain. I deliberately looked away, refusing to allow their anxious behavior to overshadow the positive developments of this evening. That resolve lasted only a moment, because as I turned from the corner, I encountered a woman whose sharp, focused look I recognized immediately, Carmen Ablin, the investigative correspondent from a prominent health publication. Her glossy hair reflected the lights, and her eyes held an intensity that indicated she was actively seeking a compelling story. "Miss Brooks," she said with focused warmth, "I was hoping to speak with you tonight." I straightened slightly. "Good evening, Carmen." "You maintain a difficult schedule to follow," she commented. "Your company's impact is exceptional. Several health centers attest they would still be overwhelmed with respiratory cases without your specific purification models." Hearing professionals commend the systems always resonated more profoundly than public praise from officials. "I am thankful for that," I said. "We are planning further expansion next fiscal quarter." "I have received that information," she replied. "News travels quickly in my professional circles, particularly when someone rises to prominence as rapidly as you have." Her gaze sharpened. That change in focus suggested she wasn't just engaging in polite conversation. She sensed the underlying tension in the environment, and reporters rarely overlook such shifts. "Is there a specific subject you wish to discuss?" I inquired. "What I am interested in discussing," she said cautiously, "is your personal history. You originated from a smaller town, established an engineering-focused company without large external financial support, and concluded the journey as a major contributor at a significant royal event. Life narratives like yours often contain segments people tend to disregard." "I did not disregard any part of it," I replied. "I lived through it." She offered a soft laugh. That was not a criticism. I respect self-made entrepreneurs, but there is a distinct mood circulating tonight, something involving internal family disagreement. My heart rate remained steady. That subject holds no relevance to the Foundation's operations. Perhaps not directly, she conceded, but stories of tenacity are more relatable when people understand the obstacles you overcame. She was correct, but she was not entitled to the pain that fueled my progress. I kept my voice calm. I prefer to concentrate on the measurable influence, not the personal conflict. Carmen nodded slowly. A reasonable preference. Should you ever decide to share the complete journey, the authentic one, contact me. She placed a card into my hand. People would definitely listen. Her words lingered as she moved away, not because she was intrusive, but because she recognized precisely what I had tried to contain. The disagreement within my family was not recent, and it was deeply rooted. A gentle vibration occurred inside my small bag. I stepped into the adjacent hallway before checking my device. 2 short messages appeared on the screen, both from communication numbers I did not immediately recognize. The first read, "We are profoundly grateful for your determined work. Please continue your efforts." The second, "You have improved our granddaughter's situation." Thank you. My throat tightened slightly. Support from unknown individuals carried more emotional weight than apologies from those who consistently diminished me. As I returned my device to my bag, footsteps echoed behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Max approaching again, but this time he appeared shaken, almost pale. "Elena," he murmured, looking anxiously down the hallway. "Can we speak privately?" My apprehension increased. What has occurred? He pulled me into an empty small chamber, carefully closing the door behind us. The room was illuminated with warm light from small fixtures casting long shadows across decorative carpets. Max ran a hand through his hair. "Father is losing control. He is stating things he should not. He is not thinking logically." "What specific statements?" He swallowed visibly. "He informed a group of potential contributors that you manipulated your way into the Foundation's favorable regard. He asserted that engineers do not belong in political or philanthropic arenas. He implied you received attention solely because you are young and, well, state the complete accusation," I instructed, "because you are a woman who fits a sympathy narrative." A dull internal coldness spread through my body. "He also claimed your business is financially unstable," Max added, "stating you may have contributed excessively because you lack understanding of long-term financial management." Every sentence eroded another layer of my forbearance. "And," Max whispered, "he publicly blamed you for causing him to appear unprepared." I pressed one hand over my mouth, not to suppress distress, but to contain the powerful indignation surging within my chest. My father was not just wounded. He became destructive when his deficiencies were exposed. Instead of addressing his own failures, he attacked the most immediate target. "Why are you relaying this information to me?" I asked. "Because he is going to completely sabotage the evening if someone does not intervene effectively." Max paused. "And because I am not allowing him to tear you down again. Not tonight." His support, tenuous as it was, affected me more than I had expected. "What action do you suggest I take?" I asked quietly. "Establish a definitive boundary," Max replied. "A genuine one. He disregards everyone else, but he reacts to absolute resolve. Resolve, a capability I spent too many years acquiring in isolation." Before I could reply, the door opened slightly. Marcy slipped inside, her face flushed with anxiety. "They are discussing departure," she whispered. "Father is threatening to issue a public statement." My eyes narrowed. "A statement about what specific subject?" "He is asserting the Foundation exploited you," she said. "That your contribution was a publicity tactic they coerced you into. If he states that in front of the assembled press—" "He will not," I interrupted. "How can you possess such certainty?" Marcy pressed. "Because I am going to speak to him now." Fear tightened her expression. "He is not in a rational state." "I do not require him to be rational," I said, moving past her. "I require him to be restrained." I opened the door and walked back into the corridor with a sense of decisive purpose I had not carried previously. For years I avoided direct confrontation with him out of ingrained habit, minimizing changing direction, accommodating. But everything had fundamentally shifted tonight. His uncontrolled emotional display no longer intimidated me. It simply exposed his underlying frailty. The ballroom was active again as I entered. My father stood near the drink service area, his face intensely flushed, grasping a glass of sparkling water as though it actively offended him. 3 guests had cornered themselves politely, clearly uncertain how to disengage from the uncomfortable situation. I crossed the floor with unwavering steps. "Father," I said. He turned abruptly. Tension hardened every line in his face. "We are leaving immediately." "No," I answered. "You will remain until the program concludes." He emitted a harsh, humorless sound. "You presume you can issue me direct instructions." "I believe," I said slowly, "you must cease speaking before you destroy what little respectable standing you have remaining." His eyebrows lifted sharply. "How dare you? You heard me clearly," I stated. "You are angry, humiliated, overwhelmed. That is understandable. Experience those emotions internally, but you will not launch an attack on my professional efforts. Not in this place, not tonight." Nearby guests ceased their conversations. He realized too late the audience he had unintentionally gathered. He leaned closer, his jaw tight. "You are forgetting the individual who provided for your upbringing." "I am recalling exactly the individual who provided for your upbringing," I replied. "And I am acknowledging the person I became in spite of that environment." Shock spread across his features, followed by a wounded, uncontrolled fury he did not attempt to mask. "You are deeply ungrateful." "No," I said calmly. "I am finished compensating for your perception." The air stilled completely between us. Every guest observing felt the intense gravity. Every breath in the room paused momentarily. My father took a physical step backward, not because he conceded the point, but because he recognized something he had never before witnessed in me. A firm boundary, a definitive line, a refusal to yield. And once that boundary was established, nothing he said or did could force me to retreat across it again. He turned away without further comment and walked toward the distant exit. Max and Marcy exchanged looks of uncertainty, but followed him, leaving me standing beneath the chandelier's light in a silence that felt unexpectedly serene. Not empty, not damaged, serene. Because the moment he physically retreated, the influence he had maintained over my life relinquished its power forever. The bright glow of the main lighting still settled on my skin. As I watched my father exit through the distant doorway, his abrupt departure, leaving a low wave of murmurs across the ballroom. For the first time all evening, the atmosphere around me felt genuinely easy to breathe. The profound tension that had shadowed every step since my arrival released its grip, moving upward like smoke dissipating into the high ceilings. I anticipated a reaction like trembling hands or a rapid heartbeat. Neither occurred. Instead, a resolute calm settled across my shoulders, steady and substantial like a protective layer finely tailored to the correct fit. Yet before I could fully exhale, the Grand Palace doors opened again, and the last person I expected to see tonight stepped inside. My mother. Her arrival quieted the internal warmth of the room more swiftly than any verbal dispute. She traversed the polished floor with a quiet, careful determination, her shawl drawn tightly around her shoulders. I had not engaged in direct conversation with her for months, not because we had argued, but because silence offered her protection from the necessity of taking a public position. She publicly supported my father only to contact me privately with incomplete expressions of regret she rarely finished. Tonight, she made no such attempts at private communication. Tonight she walked directly toward me without the slightest hesitation. "Elena," she said softly. I braced myself. "Mother?" Close up, the subtle strain around her eyes revealed everything she had attempted to conceal, the fear of losing the fragile family cohesion she had desperately maintained, the confusion about how her family had fractured so rapidly, the sadness for emotional injuries she felt incapable of healing, and the guilt for allowing so many to deepen under her passive observation. "I did not anticipate events would unfold in this manner," she whispered. "You did not inquire about the manner in which events were unfolding for me," I replied. Her breath caught audibly. "I was attempting to preserve stability." "Stability built upon silence is not stability," I stated. Her shoulders slumped visibly. She appeared smaller than I recalled, as though the bright palace lighting revealed every personal compromise she had made to endure a partnership with a man who equated absolute authority with intrinsic worth. For years, she remained passively observing while I was diminished, while my focused efforts were trivialized, while my aspirations were treated like decorative distractions. Now, standing in this grand setting, she appeared to finally grasp the consequences of her inaction. "I am truly sorry," she murmured. "I permitted your father's voice to completely overwhelm my own judgment." "You permitted it to completely overwhelm mine too," I said gently. Her eyes became visibly moist. "I recognize that now." I believed her statement. Not completely, but sufficiently. She reached out, hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand lightly on my arm. "I am immensely proud of what you have constructed. I am proud of the individual you have become. I wish I had understood the real challenges you faced sooner." A small pain surfaced, gentle but palpable. "Understanding is not equivalent to active support." "I know that," she whispered, "but I am present now." I offered no immediate response. I was not prepared to define what her presence signified, but her immediate vulnerability was not feigned performance. It was a visible reality, the reality of a woman who learned too late that remaining neutral inflicts severe damage on the child who chooses to stand alone. Before we could converse further, a voice resonated clearly across the ballroom. "Miss Brooks, when you are available, the Foundation representatives would like a moment of your time." A young coordinating staff member waited near the main dining tables. I nodded, then turned back to my mother. "I must attend to this commitment." She stepped back immediately. "We will continue this conversation when you are ready." I left her standing in the soft glow of the indirect lighting, uncertain of the future shape of our relationship, but certain that it now rested on a foundation of honesty, not elaborate pretense. As I approached the Foundation table, several international representatives rose to greet me. Individuals from water safety programs across various regions introduced themselves with clear, genuine enthusiasm. "Your diagnostic model significantly exceeds current operational standards," one confirmed. "The capacity for scalability is truly remarkable," added another. "We are eager to investigate collaborative pilot programs in the next quarter." Their genuine confidence in my focused work reinforced the stable ground beneath my feet. Not because I required their validation, but because every proposal reflected the core, true purpose behind Blue Haven: verifiable protection for at-risk communities, not personal prestige or superficial gain. During the focused conversation, a tall gentleman wearing dark-rimmed glasses reviewed a document on the table. "We meticulously analyzed your earliest prototype designs," he noted. "The level of purification precision you achieved with the initial limited resources was truly exceptional. Where did you acquire that specific knowledge?" I offered a faint internal smile. "An old motor from a simple machine," I said, "and years of careful solitary observation." They laughed, not in a derogatory manner, but with clear respect. They understood that true innovation frequently originates from unglamorous beginnings, unlike the individuals who once ridiculed those very beginnings. As the international representatives shifted their focus to discuss long-term collaborative strategies, a sudden rapid movement at the distant edge of the ballroom caught my immediate attention. My brother and cousins standing near a decorative water installation, their faces tight, their voices carrying a sharp edge. Their conversation rapidly became agitated, their hands making clipped, abrupt gestures. A staff member subtly motioned toward the security personnel, uncertain whether the rising tension would escalate into a visible disturbance. I politely excused myself from the delegates and moved across the room without rushing, but with a firm, clear intention. Max and Marcy did not notice me until I stood a few steps away from their argument. "Cease this immediately," I commanded. Both froze instantly. Marcy spun toward me first. "We are not causing any disturbance," she insisted quickly. "We are simply having a discussion." "You are engaging in a loud, agitated dispute," I corrected, "and you are doing it in a room fully occupied by members of the media." Max raked a hand through his hair distractedly. "I informed her that Father publicly blamed me," he muttered. "He said it was my explicit duty to manage your excesses, as if I ever possessed any form of control over you." Marcy made an irritated sound. "He told me the exact same thing, except he stated I should have encouraged you to be more financially conservative, whatever vague concept that is supposed to convey." "It conveys that he never truly understood me," I stated, "but that does not make my situation your immediate crisis to manage." Both looked instantly away, clearly embarrassed. I softened my tone only marginally. "You are adults. Contain your frustrations somewhere private and appropriate. This significant event is not focused on your personal feelings." Marcy's eyes quickly looked back at mine. "Is there any effective action we can take to rectify this situation?" "No," I answered. "You can only make a clear decision about the type of individuals you wish to become moving forward." Her shoulders visibly sagged. She stepped back, whispering a brief comment to Max before moving toward the exit. He lingered for a moment, searching for a meaningful response he could not find. "I should have consistently supported you," he finally said. "I failed to do so, and that responsibility is entirely mine." "The honest truth is," I replied, "I never required you to verbally defend me. I required you to stop actively assisting in tearing me down." He nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of the statement. I grasped that completely now. Whether he truly comprehended the full impact remained to be seen, but the sincerity of the attempt carried genuine weight. He departed quietly, leaving me standing alone beside the decorative water feature. Water flowed gently down the carved stone, catching the golden light in its shallow receptacle. The quiet, consistent sound anchored my breathing. That was the precise moment Princess Amelia approached from behind her footsteps, almost silent on the polished stone floor. "You managed that interaction with remarkable self-possession," she observed. "I managed them by setting clear boundaries," I corrected. "Setting boundaries often requires the highest form of self-possession." I met her gaze. "Do you ever reach a point where you stop confronting familial expectations?" She shook her head with a small, knowing smile. "Never entirely. You simply learn to permanently outgrow the limitations they attempt to impose." Her words struck with precise clarity. "I believe I am finally beginning to fully understand that." "That is good," she said, "because you will be requested to lead initiatives far more significant than you currently imagine, and you cannot permit their lingering insecurity to become a part of that new responsibility." A quiet, profound certainty settled deep within me. "I will not." Princess Amelia observed me for a moment longer. "You possess a profound internal resolve, carried the way some individuals carry cherished family legacies, with deep respect and purposeful intent. That characteristic will serve you extremely well." As she walked away, I stood completely still, absorbing the immense significance of the entire night. Not the superficial luxury, not the public acknowledgement, but the irreversible shift in my core identity. For many years, I permitted their constrained version of me to dictate my inner sense of self. Tonight, that imposed narrative had completely dissolved. Their subjective story about me was no longer a relevant factor. My authentic story finally belonged entirely to me. I turned toward the central area of the ballroom where the final phase of the formal reception was beginning. My steps were steady, my posture aligned, my breathing completely unburdened. Each movement felt like a deliberate step further into a life I had built solely with my own capabilities, unpolished, completely unassisted, and undeniably my own creation. Applause reverberated powerfully through the ballroom as the foundation chairwoman concluded her formal statements, and the sudden intensity of the sound felt like a visible current drawing every guest toward the stage. Crystal lights sparkled brightly overhead, blending with the subtle sounds of formal attire and tailored garments, the air holding a collective anticipation that vibrated through the floor beneath my feet. I stood near the orchestra section, awaiting my specific cue, breathing calmly, while the final notes of the transition piece drifted toward the arched ceiling of the balcony. When the chairwoman raised her hand for silence, the room immediately fell into a profound stillness. In acknowledgement of tonight's truly exceptional financial contributions, she announced, her voice resonating clearly through the entire hall. We wish to specifically honor one generous benefactor whose quiet support fundamentally reshaped our health and community wellness initiatives. A woman whose focused innovations in water purification fundamentally transformed the safety and security of countless homes. A visionary who requested no public recognition, only measurable positive influence. A wave of intense curiosity swept across the room. Several guests leaned forward slightly, exchanging quiet whispers about potential names. None of them suggested my name. They scanned the faces of known dignitaries, corporate executives, and wealthy patrons, anyone who aligned with a typical profile of established power. I remained completely still. The moment felt intensely surreal, yet simultaneously immediate. More like a new chapter I had been composing in private for many years was finally being revealed to the correct audience. Princess Amelia stepped forward now, holding a small, elegantly embossed folder. Her calm, regal composure commanded every single gaze. "This evening," she stated, "we formally recognize the patron responsible for the major Senior Wellness Fund, the Fundamental Children's Clean Water Initiative, and the Emergency Financial Reserve that successfully sustained 3 rural community clinics last winter. All of these vital contributions were made possible through a single consistent vision, one anchored in profound compassion, not inherited social standing." She opened the folder slightly. "It is our distinct honor to formally present the Royal Humanitarian Crest to Miss Elena Brooks." Sharp gasps broke through the profound silence with startling volume. The sudden wave of sound reached the back wall before returning as stunned, complete silence. Faces turned in my direction, initially slow and tentative, then rapidly all at once. Confusion, sudden recognition, absolute disbelief. I stepped into the central aisle as applause began hesitantly, then rapidly gained strength until it filled the entire hall with a resonance that pressed against my core. Each deliberate step carried me past guests who now regarded me with a new profound deference, as if they had fundamentally misread the introductory sections of a complex narrative and were only now discovering the true central character. A few offered respectful nods. Others managed tentative, genuine smiles. Their immediate reactions did not hold as much personal significance as the clarity rapidly crystallizing inside me. I had never truly required their prior approval, only the opportunity to reveal the authentic reality when I deliberately chose to do so. Near the third row of tables, I clearly saw Max standing beside an empty chair, his expression heavy with profound shock. He did not speak, but his eyes tracked every single movement I made. Behind him, Marcy tightly clasped a decorative pin on her dress, as though desperately attempting to anchor herself to something stable. Neither attempted to intercept my path, and for the first time they appeared like passive observers rather than active judges. My mother stood several steps behind them, moisture gathering beneath her eyes. She pressed one hand to her chest, as if attempting to hold a fragile, vital realization steady. I did not search for my father. I did not need to. When I reached the stage platform, Princess Amelia extended her hand and warmly welcomed me into the direct light. The crest emblem shone in her other palm, a small gold symbol shaped like a perfectly open circle surrounding a stylized ripple of water. She pinned it carefully just above my heart, with a measured gentleness, then moved aside to allow me to address the assembled audience. I faced the immense crowd. Their focused attention converged like a single intense beam of light, warm but deeply penetrating. My lungs filled slowly as I positioned myself behind the polished presentation stand. I spent my formative years tending properties in a community where people rigidly believed that success was reserved for those who fit a very narrow, predetermined set of expectations. I began. I did not fit that model. I came from a family that valued superficial appearances more than genuine internal effort, preferred rigid tradition more than dynamic independence, and prioritized immediate conformity more than intellectual curiosity. The words gained a steady momentum as I continued. Therefore, I learned at an early stage to construct my life quietly, to pursue my focused work without needing public applause, to consistently solve complex problems no one expected me to be able to understand. The audience members leaned in slightly drawn, not by the promise of dramatic personal conflict, but by a clear, recognizable emotion. They understood fundamental resilience. My company, Blue Haven, originated from a completely broken motor I meticulously took apart on my apartment floor. It expanded rapidly because I absolutely refused to ignore the health challenges deeply affecting seniors and children, vulnerable communities that are far too often overlooked. And tonight, receiving formal acknowledgement from the Royal Foundation means infinitely more than any typical business milestone, because it irrefutably proves that lasting fundamental influence does not require a specific inherited background. Several guests offered clear nods of agreement, their expressions softening with sincere, visible respect. The intensity of the emotions surging inside me surprised even myself. This was not merely a formal address. It was the raw, core truth I had carefully shaped out of years of deliberate dismissal, constant ridicule, and deep emotional erasure. I paused deliberately, allowing the quiet to settle naturally. Earlier this evening, I was powerfully reminded of something I used to fundamentally believe, that a sense of belonging depends entirely on other people deciding you are inherently worthy. But standing here now, I see how completely inaccurate that belief was. Worth is not a grant. It is actively lived. It is unequivocally proven. It is hard-earned through consistent choices made in profound silence long before the broader world ever notices. A powerful hush spread through the assembled crowd, not empty but intensely absorbing, internalizing each word as if stitching it into the atmosphere of the room. I am deeply grateful for this specific honor, I continued, but I am far more grateful for the challenging journey that ultimately made me strong enough to receive it. To every distinguished guest here supporting community wellness and health initiatives, thank you. And to every child and elder, our vital programs will reach this profound acknowledgement tonight belongs entirely to you. When I stepped definitively back from the podium, the applause rose again significantly louder than before, filling the vaulted ceiling with a resonant sound that wrapped around me like comforting warmth after a long period of cold. Princess Amelia embraced me briefly and lightly, whispering, "That was impeccably delivered." As I exited the stage platform, several prominent officials approached immediately to offer their congratulations. Their spoken words blurred together, heartfelt, deeply respectful, sometimes clearly awestruck. But one voice cut clearly through the general noise. "Elena." I turned to find Max standing a safe, cautious distance away. His current posture held none of the superficial self-importance he displayed earlier in the evening. Instead, there was an unfamiliar humility, raw, quiet, and genuine. "That formal speech—" He hesitated significantly. "I truly did not know you carried the weight of all of that alone." "I did not carry it alone," I replied simply. "I carried it without your consistent support." He flinched visibly, though he did not immediately retreat. "You are absolutely correct." A dense silence stretched between us, significant but not overtly hostile. Then he cleared his throat gently. "I need to ask you a serious question. Not as your brother, but as someone who genuinely wishes to understand your tenacity." I waited patiently. "How did you manage to persist?" The question was not focused on business success. It was not focused on social standing. It was focused entirely on endurance, the specific component of my life story he had never previously cared to understand. "I managed to persist because I knew the fundamental truth," I said. "I knew the focused work genuinely mattered even when you consistently did not recognize it. And I permanently stopped expecting validation from individuals who measured intrinsic worth using the completely wrong criteria." He lowered his gaze to the floor. "I see that clearly now." Whether he truly grasped the full significance or simply wished to alleviate his own current guilt did not personally concern me. His unexpected acknowledgement could not alter the past, but it marked a significant shift, a visible crack in the superficial armor he had constructed from inherited privilege and ingrained favoritism. Before either of us spoke again, Marcy approached slowly and cautiously. "Elena, the humanitarian crest genuinely suits you." Her current tone lacked any condescension, no sharp edge, no sense of rivalry, just clear, simple honesty. "Thank you," I said. She drew a slow, deliberate breath. "I fundamentally misjudged you, repeatedly over many years. I sincerely regret that failure." The apology did not instantaneously erase the years she had spent actively undermining me, yet it carried a palpable weight I chose not to dismiss. "I hope you actively learn from it," I replied. Her eyes softened visibly. "I am actively doing so." As they both stepped definitively aside, Princess Amelia approached me once more. "There is a highly private dinner reception for our most significant contributors upstairs," she said. "We would be truly honored if you would join us." "I will be there promptly," I confirmed to her. But before following her, I walked instinctively toward the balcony archway, overlooking the wide city, needing one final moment of true solitude amid the intense public praise. The cool night air drifted gently through the archway, carrying the faint scent of pine and the distant smell of city life. Lights from the city below twinkled like scattered constellations. My reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, visibly stronger, clearly steadier, completely unshadowed by any lingering self-doubt. Tonight changed absolutely nothing about the difficult years behind me, but it fundamentally changed everything about the promising years ahead. My father could cling to his outdated social hierarchy. My relatives could frantically attempt to redefine their own personal roles. None of it held the power to touch the core of what I had successfully built or the fundamental path I had fiercely claimed. For the first time in my entire life, their destructive stories no longer held any authority over my true self. And as I turned away from the balcony to rejoin the Foundation's senior leadership, a quiet, liberating truth settled deep inside me. With absolute, unwavering certainty, the future did not hold any fear for me anymore. I was already firmly standing in the fully realized life I had tirelessly fought to create. The private dinner commenced under soft amber light from wall sconces, their gentle glow reflecting across the long, polished table where several dignitaries and program directors had already taken their seats. Silverware made a delicate sound as servers placed the dishes before each guest, but the atmosphere held a quiet, focused energy, one threaded with focused anticipation, profound curiosity, and something else I could not fully define. I took my designated seat near Princess Amelia, keenly aware of how many eyes subtly followed my movement. Every simple gesture tonight felt fully witnessed, though not in the invasive, judgmental way my family used to observe me. This attention was fundamentally different. Their focus originated from genuine admiration, not from active suspicion. Still somewhere beneath the surface warmth, a distant sense of disquiet flickered, reminding me the evening was not yet finished, shaping its final form. During the initial course, the conversation flowed smoothly around upcoming global partnerships, new research grants, and critical expansion initiatives. Princess Amelia spoke with passionate conviction about the Foundation's planned expansion into underserved rural communities. Yet even as I listened attentively, I sensed another subtle shift in the room dynamics. Quiet whispered side remarks, discreet glances toward the main entrance. I was not the only one noticing a significant absence. My father had not made a reappearance, and for once the silence he left in his wake felt like an immense relief. The specific tension that usually followed his presence had clearly eased, allowing the entire space to breathe easily again. While the dessert plates were being carefully cleared, Amelia leaned slightly toward me. "There is something significant I want you to review," she murmured. "It arrived just an hour ago, and I strongly believe it rightfully belongs in your hands." Her tone suggested a deep significance beyond simple formal correspondence. I followed her to a smaller adjoining chamber lined with formal portraits of past benefactors. A staff member stood near a polished side table where a sealed document waited beneath the official crest of the Royal Foundation. "It originated from the Ministry of Public Health," Amelia explained. They dispatched an updated comprehensive report on all the districts currently utilizing your specific purification systems. I wanted you to review it privately before the formal public announcement scheduled for tomorrow. I carefully broke the official seal. Inside lay a concise summary of health case reductions, detailed water toxicity reports, formal health surveys, and written feedback from clinic directors. The tangible results were astounding. Emergency respiratory admissions had clearly dropped across 3 entire counties. Infection rates in senior care facilities decreased by a significant margin. 2 remote rural towns recorded their first complete quarter without any official water advisories in over 10 years. Lines of precise data, comprehensive charts, and handwritten comments from clinic directors filled every page. "You achieved this outcome," Amelia said gently. "Without your sustained effort, none of these specific measurable improvements would exist." An intense, undeniable emotion surged behind my ribs, uncontrollable and profound. Every demanding night, every unsuccessful prototype, every deliberate dismissal from family and local community members who viewed engineering as a casual pursuit instead of a demanding profession, it all culminated in this single, irrefutable reality: the world had tangibly improved because I absolutely refused to stop building. Before strong emotion could surface, the soft sound of the door opening interrupted us. My mother stepped into the chamber, tightly clutching her small handbag like a crucial lifeline. She paused momentarily when she observed the document folder in my hands. "May I request a few private moments with my daughter?" she asked quietly. Princess Amelia glanced at me for explicit permission. I offered a slight nod. She excused herself without the slightest hesitation, leaving the small room completely quiet and still. My mother approached slowly and tentatively. Gone was the artificial, formal politeness she displayed in the main ballroom. In its place stood a woman completely devoid of any pretense, weighed down by everything she had intentionally ignored for too long a period. "I was genuinely unsure if you would consent to speak with me," she admitted honestly. "I was genuinely unsure of myself," I replied truthfully. Her fingers visibly tightened around the handbag strap. "I heard your formal speech, and the presentation ceremony, and the specific, respectful way people spoke about your life's work." She drew a noticeable breath, shaky but clearly sincere. "I never fully grasped what you were actively constructing. I heard the technical terms but failed to recognize the sheer scale of the positive influence. Tonight I finally saw it." I closed the folder gently and placed it on the table. "Why did you not ask or seek to understand earlier?" "I was completely afraid," she confessed openly. "Your father rigidly believed that success had to look a certain specific way, and I consistently adopted and repeated that belief without ever questioning its fundamental validity. I genuinely thought that if I openly supported you, he would think I was actively undermining his authority. I truly believed that preserving domestic stability meant remaining completely silent." Her voice faltered slightly. "But remaining silent only successfully protected him. It did not successfully protect you." A hollow, significant ache stirred gently behind my breastbone. I had waited literally years for her to acknowledge that specific, brutal truth. I was deeply unsure I would ever actually hear it spoken aloud. She continued, her voice gaining a fragile strength. "When you purposefully walked onto that stage, I realized how completely blind I had been to your struggles. You achieved so much without any familial help, without consistent encouragement, without the fundamental love and respect you clearly deserved, and I passively allowed that failure to happen." She reached out toward me, stopping her hand just short of making contact with my arm. "I am deeply sorry, Elena. I should have stood firmly beside you long before this night arrived." A part of me wanted to aggressively question why it took intense public recognition to reveal what had been undeniably clear all along. Another calmer part understood that people often require external objective mirrors to confront deeply ingrained internal failings. I permitted a long moment of silence to fill the space until I finally said, "Acknowledgement is important, but taking genuine accountability is fundamentally more important." She nodded, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. I am completely prepared for that accountability too. Her palpable sincerity softened something deep within me. I did not instantly forgive everything, but I recognized a genuine shift, a fragile opening that had never existed before. A bridge was being constructed slowly, not yet fully traversable, but definitely possible to build. Before I could offer a meaningful response, hurried footsteps sounded from the corridor outside. A staff member appeared quickly at the threshold. "Miss Brooks, I sincerely apologize for the intrusion. Max is urgently requesting to speak with you. He insists the matter is critical." The clear urgency in the staff worker's voice suggested the request was far from casual. My mother immediately stepped aside as I followed the staff member back toward the balcony hall. Just outside the large glass doors, Max waited completely alone beneath the soft glow of the lanterns, his face drawn and intensely tense. The slight night breeze tugged gently at his coat, but he appeared not to notice the cold. "We need to have a serious discussion right now," he said, taking one agitated step before facing me directly. "Something very damaging happened after Father abruptly left the main ballroom." My internal tension ratcheted up immediately. What damaging thing did he do now? It is not just what he physically did, it is what he explicitly stated, and to the completely wrong individuals. Max exhaled sharply, a sound of profound frustration. He directly confronted two senior Foundation advisors in the secluded courtyard. He openly told them he planned to set the complete record straight about your true background and contributions. He claimed you exaggerated your professional achievements. He suggested your major donation was simply some kind of desperate, opportunistic public display. He explicitly accused the royal officials of actively exploiting you for easy publicity. My skin felt suddenly cold. He openly stated all of that to them, and significantly more damaging things. Max swallowed hard. He was uncontrollably ranting, loudly. Numerous people clearly overheard the entire outburst. I pressed my fingertips firmly against the railing, consciously anchoring myself against the profound internal heat rising quickly in my chest. His words echoed the exact crippling fears I once battled in isolation. The chilling fear that someone could arbitrarily rewrite my genuine hard-earned accomplishments simply because they felt socially entitled to dictate the narrative. But tonight, his reckless accusations did not physically wound me. They constituted a direct, verifiable insult to the truth itself. "Is the Royal Foundation officially concerned?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "They are definitely not doubting your integrity," Max said quickly, rushing to reassure me. "But they are legitimately worried he will continue to embarrass himself further in public, or potentially derail the massive goodwill your dedicated work has already generated." I stared out toward the palace gardens, their meticulously maintained hedges gleaming under the soft floodlights. "Where is he physically located right now?" "In the south courtyard area," Max whispered, his tension palpable. Still intensely angry, still loudly expressing his opinions. He hesitated slightly. "I absolutely do not want him to cause any further damage that you absolutely do not deserve. You have earned every single component of this phenomenal night. I am personally asking, please allow me to actively help you manage this." His direct plea surprised me significantly. "How can you possibly help me effectively?" "I will successfully drive him home before he utters another damaging word, but he listens to your statements better than he listens to anyone else in the family." Max's expression carried a noticeable mixture of desperation and deep regret. "If you speak to him just one final time, perhaps he will finally agree to stop his destructive behavior." A long, slow breath left me deliberately. "I already confronted him, Max. I know that fact. But he was not completely finished unraveling at that moment. He might genuinely hear you now." He stepped closer to me. "Please, just attempt this one last effort, for your own peace of mind, not for his sake." Even as intense frustration pulsed through me, another truth quickly surfaced. Whether I physically confronted him or chose to avoid him, my father's destructive spiral would inevitably continue unchecked. His oversized ego could not withstand this public exposure. He needed absolute control, and losing it so dramatically tonight had visibly unhinged something brittle and fundamental inside his character. Avoiding him would not effectively neutralize the significant damage he was determined to inflict upon himself. I nodded once firmly. "Fine, take me directly to him." Max led me through a sheltered glass walkway overlooking the serene gardens. The silence outside felt oddly distorted, as though the entire palace grounds were collectively holding their breath. We reached the quiet courtyard, where my father stood near a large stone fountain, leaning heavily against the decorative rim. His shoulders were slumped, his expression completely unfocused, his features visibly worn down by internal bitterness rather than simple physical exhaustion. When he saw me approaching, tension immediately rippled across his jawline. So the victorious daughter finally arrives to witness the aftermath. "I am not here to engage in a meaningless argument," I stated calmly. He scoffed loudly. "You have already decisively won your battle. Congratulations, everyone in this place now actively worships your newfound presence." "This entire evening is not focused on winning or losing," I answered. "It is focused solely on the truth." "The truth?" He emitted a harsh, brittle sound of forced laughter. "Your version of the truth comes conspicuously wrapped in public applause and royal commendation. My version comes from inconvenient objective reality. You actively abandoned your entire family to aggressively chase personal glory." "I actively constructed something worthwhile," I stated. "You consistently refused to see its true value." "You think this small crest makes you intrinsically special?" he snapped, pointing a trembling finger toward the pin on my dress. "It simply makes you an easily manipulated figurehead. You are incredibly naive if you genuinely believe these powerful people truly care about your well-being." Max quickly stepped forward, a clear alarm rising in his expression, but I raised a hand, stopping him decisively. "Father," I said slowly and deliberately, "you are intensely angry because your outdated idea of power and influence no longer consistently matches the reality of the world around you. But actively attacking my dedicated work will not magically restore your personal comfort or outdated sense of authority." "Your work," he muttered with deep contempt, "vastly overrated, excessively overpraised. It has actively improved and sustained lives," I replied, looking directly into his eyes. "Objective, verifiable numbers do not lie or manipulate." "People do lie constantly," he countered immediately. The conversation had spiraled into a deeply dangerous space, now tight, completely volatile, intensely simmering with long-held resentments he was completely unprepared to confront directly. I saw with absolute clarity that the man standing directly before me was not battling me personally. He was fiercely battling an inconvenient truth he had buried so deeply he was now incapable of accepting its sudden public emergence. My verifiable success had visibly cracked the fundamental foundation of his entire worldview. And instead of choosing to constructively adapt and expand his perspective, he had simply fractured under the pressure. I took one deliberate step back from him. "Max will successfully drive you home immediately. This night is completely concluded for you." "It is not concluded at all," he growled, his voice thick with unspent rage. "I will speak to absolutely whomever needs to hear the unvarnished truth about you." "No," I said, my voice maintaining its unwavering steadiness. "You definitely will not, because truth be told, no one significant is actively listening to you anymore." Something vital in him visibly faltered. His breath hitched audibly, not from anger, but from pure disbelief, as if the stable ground of the world had suddenly shifted violently beneath him, and he was the last isolated person to finally feel the complete instability. I turned decisively toward the palace walkway. "Good night, Father." His voice did not follow me this time. His aggressive arguments did not pursue me relentlessly. Only a profound, heavy silence trailed behind a silence that definitively marked the precise moment the delicate balance of power between us finally irrevocably shattered and shifted forever. Max caught up to me quickly near the archway. "Are you physically all right, Elena?" "I am absolutely finished letting him define my worth," I said, looking back at the palace. "That fundamental realization is more than sufficient." He nodded slowly, understanding completely. "Thank you for making that final attempt." "No," I replied firmly. "I was not making that final effort for his benefit." As I walked back into the warm, comforting palace glow, I felt the monumental shift settling deep inside my core. The night had completely stripped away every single layer of protective pretense, leaving the core truth standing completely bare beneath the chandelier light. I could finally face him without intense fear. I could stand confidently without constantly shrinking my presence. I could walk decisively away without any lingering guilt. For the very first time in my entire life, I fully grasped something profoundly liberating. My father's personal downfall was not a burden I needed to carry. His uncontrolled rage was not a responsibility I needed to manage. And his outdated limiting version of me had finally lost all measurable power and influence. The early morning light streamed gently through my apartment's expansive windows, washing over the warm hardwood floors in long, quiet, comforting bands of golden light. The vast city below began to stir slowly, its familiar early rhythm, carrying the steady hum of buses, the distant muffled sound of car horns, and the soft metallic rattle of shop owners unlocking their storefronts. I stood calmly before the glass, holding a comforting mug of herbal tea to warm my hands, thoughtfully replaying the entire sequence of events from the gala, not with deep shock or persistent anger, but with a profound quiet calm that felt intensely and personally earned. The night had successfully peeled away the final illusions I once clung to, revealing a fundamental truth simple enough to hold without trembling. I had stepped fully and completely into my own authentic life without seeking any prior permission from others. For the very first time, that profound realization felt definitively permanent. A soft electronic chime signaled a new message on my phone, an updated projection from my company's financial planning division for our ambitious new research unit. Directly beneath it, a heartfelt voicemail from a small community clinic in northern Colorado expressed their immense gratitude again for the rapid replacement of their crucial purification unit following an intense winter storm. And interspersed among those critical updates, a short, simple text message from my mother: "I am deeply proud of you. Whatever challenging future comes next, I sincerely hope I can meet you honestly in that new space." Those few words settled gently and unexpectedly inside me, rather than aggressively reopening any old emotional wounds. I did not immediately respond to her text. Instead, I allowed them to linger in my thoughts deeply, unsure whether they definitively marked a hopeful new beginning or merely constituted an incredibly overdue acknowledgement of reality. My attention shifted immediately when my doorbell rang loudly. I was not expecting any visitors at this early hour. When I opened the door slightly, Max stood in the hallway, his hands firmly shoved deep into his coat pockets. He looked noticeably fatigued, but not chaotic or aggressively angry like the night before. More genuinely self-aware, humbled in a way I had not witnessed since before the years of clear favoritism constructed a social pedestal beneath him. "Is there any chance we can speak privately?" he requested, his voice low. I gestured for him to enter the apartment. He paused briefly just past the threshold, carefully taking in the entire space. The clean, simple lines, the pervasive quiet, the complete, palpable absence of any pressure or tension. "This living space genuinely feels like you," he murmured softly, almost with a sense of envy. "It feels exclusively like profound peace," I replied. He nodded slowly, rubbing the sensitive back of his neck with visible distress. "I absolutely will not stay for long. I came here this morning because I urgently needed to express something crucial before it completely became too late." I remained standing calmly near the kitchen island, waiting patiently without offering any immediate prompts. "You absolutely did not deserve the intense public display that occurred at the gala," he stated clearly, "or the constant emotional neglect that occurred consistently before it. I spent literally years treating you like someone who desperately needed to constantly prove her basic worth, when in reality you were already completely surpassing all of us by every objective measure." His breath hitched slightly. "Father explicitly told me my core duty was to perpetually watch over you, to actively ensure you did not take any personal risks that would potentially make us look socially unacceptable. I completely believed him then. I absolutely should not have believed any of it." "Believing him was the path of least resistance," I said, my voice measured. "He actively ensured that reality." Max's eyes noticeably tightened with pain. "That deeply ingrained reality does not provide any kind of excuse for my complete failure. I actively hurt you personally with my thoughtless comments. I constantly ridiculed complex things I failed to fundamentally understand. And I rigidly followed Father's clear leadership because it consistently ensured I remained in his good graces socially." He swallowed hard, his voice strained. "You never once actively asked for anything. You never once publicly demanded praise or attention. You simply worked diligently, and we consistently ignored every single thing that genuinely mattered about you." I did not soften my resolve. The unvarnished truth had its rightful place, and this morning it deserved to stand completely firm. "I do not possess the power to rewrite our entire childhood history," I stated calmly, "or the subsequent years of distance. But you personally possess the power to decide the type of individual you actively choose to become moving forward from this moment." He nodded slowly, processing the statement completely. "I want to actively become someone you might genuinely trust someday. Not now, I know I have definitively not earned that level of trust yet, but I sincerely hope eventually." His voice noticeably faltered. "I want the distinct chance to truly try to earn it." I carefully weighed his direct words. They were delivered completely without any immediate expectation or defensiveness. That crucial fact made them authentically credible. "We will observe the sustained effort," I said. A wave of relief visibly flickered across his tired features. Not complete joy, not immediate triumph, just a quiet, profound recognition that forgiveness would not be automatic or immediate. He slowly stepped back toward the door. "If you ever genuinely require any form of assistance with anything, absolutely anything at all, please know I am genuinely present for you." I did not actively promise to immediately contact him, yet I did not completely shut the door on the possibility of future communication. When he quietly departed, the apartment settled again into its gentle, restorative stillness. Later that afternoon, I walked confidently to the Blue Haven corporate office. The building's sleek glass exterior reflected the clear sky in clean, shimmering, organized planes. Inside, my dedicated team was already actively bustling around conference tables, rigorously testing final prototypes, meticulously reviewing new data, and diligently preparing for the next major purification system rollout. Conversations paused only briefly when I physically entered, then immediately resumed with renewed bright energy and intense focus. "Good morning, Elena," my lead engineer called out enthusiastically. "We just finished the final analysis on the nitrate reduction module. The verifiable results are completely incredible." I joined their huddle, slipping seamlessly back into the rhythm of the focused work. Each technical detail, each data graph, each detailed schematic emphatically reaffirmed the life I had deliberately chosen. This was not a quick victory lap born of childish spite. This was core purpose, real-world impact, a chosen path with deep, strong roots that extended far beneath superficial family approval or temporary public recognition. By midday, I stepped into a highly critical conference call with Princess Amelia and several high-level Foundation officials. They meticulously outlined expanded comprehensive partnerships for future senior wellness programs and large-scale water infrastructure upgrades. Precisely the kind of deeply meaningful projects I meticulously dreamed of years ago when I was tirelessly dismantling old engines under inadequate flickering apartment lights. Before the lengthy call successfully concluded, Amelia offered a final, focused comment. "Your public address last night, your immense poise, your absolute clarity, genuinely resonated with people far more profoundly than you know. The global world desperately requires leaders like you, Miss Brooks. Leaders, not mere prodigies, not symbolic tokens, not isolated anomalies. Leaders." After the productive meeting, I carefully packed my notes and walked confidently outside the office building. The crisp winter air brushed gently against my face, cool and instantly bracing. Downtown traffic flowed steadily and purposefully. People crossed the wide streets in hurried, focused strides. Yet in the midst of all that metropolitan commotion, I felt deeply anchored in a profoundly personal way I had never experienced as a young child. In the early evening, I deliberately visited a local senior center Blue Haven actively supported. A wonderful retired teacher named Nora greeted me with warm, familiar, calloused hands. "Your tireless work keeps all of us breathing easier," she said, her voice genuine. "Quite literally, you know." She laughed softly. "You have permanently changed more lives than you can possibly realize." Her immediate heartfelt gratitude struck me deeper than any prestigious accolade. It was authentic, immediate, and completely tangible. Undeniable proof that my profound sense of purpose existed far beyond any contentious ballroom confrontation. As I finally left the community center, the sun dipped dramatically behind the sharp skyline, painting the vast city in intense streaks of orange and deep violet. Lights flickered to life across countless apartment towers. Street lamps cast long golden halos onto the darkening pavement. I paused intentionally on the sidewalk, allowing the complete view to firmly imprint itself upon my memory. This current world, the successful, meaningful one I had actively created through sheer persistence, countless late nights, and relentless, unwavering belief, felt overwhelmingly larger than any single emotional wound inflicted by the people who once casually mocked me. The past pain did not entirely vanish. It fundamentally transformed. It successfully became a strong boundary, a crucial compass, a permanent reminder of the life I fundamentally refused to shrink myself for. When I finally reached my apartment building, I poured myself a glass of clean water and stepped out onto my wide private balcony. The entire city hummed gently beneath me, vibrant, alive, and intensely steady. Far below, an emergency siren wailed faintly, followed by the soft, rushing sound of a passing bus. I leaned my elbows comfortably on the railing, allowing the cool night breeze to lift my hair gently. Then, almost without conscious thinking, I pulled out my phone and intentionally opened a completely blank message window. Not to my estranged father, not to Max, to my mother. "I am willing to talk openly, one serious step at a time." I hit the crucial send button before I could possibly second-guess the decision. There was no active rush for immediate reconciliation, no intense external pressure. But moving confidently forward did not necessarily require carrying persistent, debilitating bitterness. It absolutely required clear, honest communication. The night deepened steadily, wrapping the huge city in quiet, comforting constellations. I stood there for a very long time, allowing the simple, profound gratitude to settle across me like a gentle, reassuring weight. Not gratitude for the unnecessary hardship, but immense gratitude for the unwavering internal strength that had successfully survived it all. When I finally stepped back inside my quiet apartment, I turned off the balcony lights, plunging the space into a soft, calming dimness. Before finally heading to rest, I whispered something barely audible into the profound darkness. Not a dramatic, powerful declaration, not an unbreakable vow, just a fundamental truth, finally free enough to speak. I actively chose this life, and I will continue to firmly choose it every single day. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Let me know which moment felt most powerful. And if you want more stories about strength, justice, and transformation, subscribe so you